if my Swedish teacher told me to say the right thing. Ni ser bra ut! So, hey, good morning. Super happy to be here. I always like to begin by just giving you a moment to think about what you need to be really present over the next kind of 20, 30 minutes. I'm so excited to be doing this in real life with 3D people. I've been doing talks online for the last 3 years, so super nice, and also really excited to be invited to take part in something in Sweden, because I'm new to Sweden and Stockholm. So thank you so much for inviting me to the Creative Mornings team. So, little introduction to me. My name is Lauren Currie. I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a public speaker, I'm the founder of an organisation called UPFRONT, and we're on a mission to support 1 million women with confidence, visibility and power. I'm the trustee of an organisation called Pregnant Then Screwed, which I think gets the award for the best company name ever. Now, this is an organisation that probably isn't so necessary in Sweden, but I can tell you is extremely necessary in the UK, and the UK has the second largest childcare fees in the Western developed world. Mothers are completely on their knees, it is totally broken. So Pregnant Then Screwed does a lot of campaigning and policy change for working parents. In 2017 I was awarded an OBE, which is a fancy award that the royal family give out, and I won that for my services to design and diversity. I grew up in a small town called Ayrshire in Scotland, which you can probably tell already, and I now live here in Stockholm in Sollentuna with my partner and my wee boy who is nearly 5. So online I'm Lauren Currie and UPFRONT is UPFRONT Global, so please do follow me on Instagram and LinkedIn if you're not already doing that, because I write on those platforms every day about a lot of the themes that we're going to talk about this morning. So this is a snapshot of my Swedish journey. We packed up in London October 2020. Joe had the keys to the apartment that we were going to move in. He was waiting at the other end for us. 9 months later, I got my person number. This was me celebrating and deciding to have a photo shoot with the Swedish bouquet of flowers. I thought everything's going to work. I'm going to be able to get post now. Still don't get post not, you know. But no, I'm super happy to be here. We've been here for 2 years. And I guess my story begins with a lot of challenging the status quo, asking why, not taking no for an answer. And I think this mindset of constantly being curious about how we can make things better, how we can build and design things to be better, has been there in me since a very young age and has served me well. I've done a lot of work over the last decade that I'm extremely proud of. The core of my craft is design, so I studied product design at university and then gradually shifted into service design. And this was when service design was a very small, immature discipline. So I then founded one of the first service design consultancies for social change in Scotland and built that up into a large practice over 7-8 years, and then moved into organisational design. So all along the way thinking about how can we use the craft of design and a designerly mindset to make things better. And some of to kind of bring that to life for you. So I write a lot online. I've written 1,581 blog posts over the last 12 years. That works out like 11 posts a month. I have an online community of 50,000 people. I get paid to speak to audiences all over the world. I'm a trustee. My writing has been featured in fancy places. So my first business, Snook, the service design consultancy, I started in 2008. My third business I built whilst I was pregnant, Letter Love Shop. So we make gender neutral art for nurseries. My fourth business, Nobel, was an organisational design consultancy during my maternity leave. And then my fifth and sixth business, Stride and Ridley. So Stride was a leadership app that we worked on for 12 months. Ridley's was a horse truck that we turned into a coffee truck. And my moment that I wrote down in my post-it is this. So I went full-time up front, which was my side hustle for 5 years. I went full-time in April 2021, and yesterday we passed £1 million in revenue. So we've gone from 0 to £1 million in 2 years, no funding, no grants, no loans, totally bootstrapped. So that's the decision that I made in my professional life, and moving to Sweden. I think that's had a huge impact. But there's also lots of stories behind those fancy, kind of impressive statistics. And that the town I grew up in is not great. Like, I had a really lovely life and never wanted for anything, but I was surrounded in a lot of poverty and a lot of crime. I was the very first person in my family to go to university. I didn't go to private school. I built my first business when I was 23, so like totally on my own, no idea what I was doing. Of course, I have an accent, which I think Swedes find quite charming, but in the UK doesn't always get met with such grace. I've built 6 successful businesses. My parents are not wealthy. I didn't grow up with kind of role models of people doing what I do now around me. I don't have a rich husband. I have my baby who's 5 and he's amazing, but I had a lot of trauma and a loss to have my baby. And for a long time I've been the breadwinner in my family. And the reason I share these stories is because I think too often we only hear the first slide. And I think if more people share these types of stories, I think the world would feel kinder and safer, and we would also feel more able to take those leaps and jumps into building our own businesses or quitting the jobs that were making us unhappy or whatever it might be. So truth, what a brief. I must say it was keeping me up at night a bit, because I was thinking, oh my gosh, there's so many different ways to interpret it. It's such a big idea and it's so relevant to the times we live in lots of different ways. And so this is the statistic that I want you to hold in mind whilst we go through these stories. This is a statistic from the UN, that 90% of people in the world have a negativity bias towards women. It's heavy truth, a heavy fact. And so what this means in the context of my work up front is that the problem we're trying to solve isn't that women aren't confident. It's not that we need to teach women, non-binary people, historically excluded people. We don't need to teach them how to be confident, but we need to build a world where confidence is rewarded. Because the problem is that right now, the world does not reward confidence in women. In fact, we are punished for having confidence in lots of different ways. And that is why I do the work I do at Pregnant Then Screwed. So this was 2 weeks ago. 15,000 mums marched across the whole of the UK. And Jolie, who runs Pregnant Then Screwed, asked me to stand at the front of the London March and lead it, which of course I was like, yes, this is like my dream job. And then at the time I was absolutely terrified. There was 8,000 people behind me. This megaphone was very heavy. The next day I was like so nervous. But it was awesome, like never forget it in my whole life. Such a special moment. And we ended up on every national newspaper, every radio station. Like, we achieved our goal. We got their attention, and the government noticed and listened to us. And then, of course, up front, what I spend my days doing. So the way that we do the work we do is 3 ways. We have a 6-week online course, and each cohort of that course is called a bond. Bond is the collective noun for a group of women. We also have our global community, which is our global bond, full of alumni from bonds 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And then we put lots of content into the world, whether that's like me meeting you this morning, or I have a podcast that is released every Monday morning, short 15, 20-minute moments to kick your week off with power and agency. And this is a snapshot of our reach. Our last bond number 6, we welcomed 512 people from over 25 different countries. We have incredible business clients who enrol their teams and their departments on our program, and it really, really works. So we have an evaluation framework that says, so at the end of the 6 weeks, we can show the growth that people have experienced. In Bond 5, their average increase in confidence was 109%. So this is the work that has influenced the truths that I'm going to talk to you about today. This is kind of what I had in mind when I was thinking about what do I want to say when it comes to truth. All of this work through Bond, thousands of graduates working with women from all over the world on these ideas of confidence, leadership, and power. And the one thing that I have learned from all of that work is that truths can change. So something that feels very true to you right now, you are able to change that. You have the agency and the power to make new truths, to help new truths emerge for other people. And for me, that feels incredibly exciting and liberating. So I've got 13 truths that I want to share with you this morning, and then we're going to have a conversation together about them. So the first one is this old truth that it's about you. And I know that Sweden has a particular view on this in its schools at Jantelagen, where you're taught that it's actually not about you, it's about everybody. And I think that the essence of that is progressive and right, because I think the new truth that we have to commit to if we want the world to grow in the way we want it to grow is that it's about all of us. An individual mindset does not serve the greater good, it serves the status quo. And I think all we need to do is turn on the news and see how politicians who take the perspective of personal growth, personal development, personal success harms the majority of others. The old truth of being grateful. So you have to, I'm just really grateful to be here. I'm just really grateful to have a job in the first place. Or I'm just really grateful that you let me in. It's like, actually, you can be grateful and demand more at the same time. And I think women in particular are taught that you cannot be both those things at the same time. And so we are rewarded for only being grateful and don't really have much role modelling around what does it look like to be grateful and demand more at the same time. The old truth is waiting to be invited, whether that be to the boardroom, to the party, to the meeting, to the project. You wait until somebody notices you and invites you to be part of it. You have to invite yourself, especially if you're a woman, especially if you are someone from a historically excluded group. You have to invite yourself, because the status quo doesn't want to invite people who are different from the group that dominate. And so I want you to think about what would it look like to invite yourself. Waiting for expertise. So how many of you have had an idea, have wanted to do this thing, but thought, I just need to learn more, go on one more course, buy one more book, watch some more YouTube videos, then I'll be ready. So many of us spend our whole lives in a waiting room because you're waiting for the car, for the check, for the dress size to go down, for the expertise, where actually you need to start right now, just exactly as you are. Because that day where you feel like you have all the expertise you need will never come. It took me 5 years to convince myself I didn't need a PhD in the psychology of confidence to be able to build up front. And that's really real. Like, I have text messages that I sent to my friends, like, who am I to think I can have authority on this topic? Other people have written books on it. You have to start right now exactly as you are. The old truth is about following the script. So there's a certain way we do things. There's a way that we run events, there's a way we give talks, there's a way we hire people, there's a way we host dinner parties, there's a way we share ideas with the world. And there's an expectation of this is how we do things. And I think extraordinary things happen when you create your own script. And you say, I'm going to do this my way. So up front, we made an announcement that our product is completely free if you're on maternity leave. And people told me I was crazy, because that's not the script. The script is you have a product, people pay for it. But I'm creating a new script, which is acknowledging that for some women, no matter how hard they work, they will always be on the back foot because of deeply systemic barriers that we don't have power over. So let's make it easier. Let's remove that barrier. Wait to be included. Now, being included is different from being invited. Being included is when you are genuinely heard and listened to, and you're in rooms where you're appreciated and you're wanted and you feel able to be yourself. You can't wait for other people to create that for you. You have to include yourself. And think about what that looks like, because when you include yourself, the other people around you are watching you and they learn how to include themselves. And there's so many different ways to do this. An old truth is keeping it to yourself. Keep it all locked away in a safe, in a notebook, in a Google slide deck, wherever you keep your best ideas. Wait till it's ready and then reveal it to the world. I think that is out of date. And again, only serves the status quo, because when you share everything you know, all the other people in the world who are excited about the same things you're excited about find you. And together you're more powerful. Together you're smarter. And when you share what you know, it means that people who are trying to do similar things to you and are 5 years, 2 years, 1 year behind you can get there faster. Because you're sharing, this is how I did it. This is what worked. Every single week on LinkedIn, I write about the mistakes I made that week, what I learned, what I would do differently. And people keep telling me this is so helpful and also so rare and unusual, because we're taught to keep all these things to ourselves. And we're taught that being visible, whether it's writing online, talking online, sharing our ideas, we're taught that we do that to shine, to say, look at me, look how great I am. And actually, I think it's not about sharing to shine, it's sharing to learn. To help others learn, but also so you yourself can learn. Like, the most powerful way for you to learn is to craft and write and form stories about what you know in order to share it with other people. So it's less sharing to learn and more sharing to shine. We are taught to clap loudly for ourselves. We are taught to celebrate our own achievements, progress, milestones. I want to live in a world where we clap just as loudly for other people as we do for ourselves, especially other people who are faced with more systemic barriers to overcome. What would it look like for you to clap just as loudly for the black women in your organisation as you do for yourself if you're a white woman? What would it look like if we scaled that across Sweden? Like, that's genuine change. And the old truth is about taking the mic, like doing what you can to get to that microphone so that you can have your voice heard and tell your story. And I do want you to do that, but I also want you to think about when it is the right time to pass the mic, when it is the right time to step out of the way and say, I'm going to give this mic to the LGBTQ community. I'm going to give this mic to a trans person. I'm going to give this mic to a brown woman. Because that's what we need to do. We need to acknowledge that we are not all equal and that society is deeply unequal. And so what can you do with the power you have to pass the mic? And whether that's an actual mic or a metaphorical microphone. And we're taught to wait for power. So we're taught to wait for job titles and more money and essentially permission to have influence and have power. You do not need to wait for power. If you wait, you will be waiting a very long time. You have to take power. You have to take it for yourself. Because the people who benefit from the world being exactly as it is right now do not want women to have power. Women's rights are under attack in every single country in the world right now. You know, the norm doesn't want us to have power. We have to take it. And one of the ways that they keep that power is by building walls and gates. And we are also taught to build walls and gates around ourselves. I meet so many women in the bond who will say that one of the scenarios that's had the worst impact on their confidence is a senior woman who has been toxic and has treated them unfairly, because that woman progressed inside a culture that rewarded people for building gates and walls. And what would happen if instead we built ladders around us, all of us? Like, no matter who you are or what you do, there is somebody out there who wants to do what you're doing right now, who looks at you and thinks, wow, how did they get there? How are they doing that? And when you build ladders around you, you're opening up that conversation. You're inviting people into your journey. How can I help you? What do you want to know? What can we learn together? And we're taught before we can do anything, you have to be organised. You have to have a plan. Like some of the moments we heard this morning, you know, it's crazy to leave your job without a plan. We're taught we need to have a plan. And actually, I think the new truth is you just have to get going. And then you get good. It's all about starting. Because that's ultimately what builds your confidence, the doing. You can't learn this stuff through theory or talking. You have to try and put it into practice. So these are my 13 new truths. If you want to take a picture, this is the one to take a picture of, because they're all there together. And what we're going to do now is have some conversation among ourselves.
Wait, I'm going to take a picture. Sorry, I'm like taking up the whole space.
Okay. So, and I love this quote. I can't find the person who said this. It's sort of source unknown. I think this sums it all up. It's like if you were born into a world in which you don't fit, it's because you were born to help create a new one. This really stopped me in my tracks. I think it's just so fitting for a conversation about truth, a conversation about women's power, a conversation about progress.